egregious under these circumstances. I'm old enough to not. I was subbing in for someone. It's not something I do very much.
Welcome. My name is Era Suksi, and I'm the director of the School for Advanced Studies in Arts and Humanities, and this event is part of the SASA Speakers Series. I'm really excited that Julie Bevan is here with us today. I'll introduce her in a moment, but first I'll just acknowledge that this event is hosted by the School for Advanced Studies in Arts and Humanities at Western University, which is located on the traditional territories of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Lenape-Wauk, and Chinanton peoples, on lands connected with the London Township and Sombra Treaties of 1796 and the Dish with One Spoon Covenant Wampum. By recognizing people's relations to this land, our intention is to make explicit Indigenous peoples' ongoing presence, their rights to self-determination, and our shared and individual responsibilities to uphold those rights, to contribute to the work of truth and reconciliation, and to celebrate, to honor, and to educate ourselves about Indigenous cultures. Committed to a respectful and decolonizing approach to righting wrongs of the past and present, we acknowledge especially the sacred teachings of love, respect, courage, honesty, wisdom, humility, and truth to guide our approach to furthering equity, diversity, and inclusion for the benefit of all. Julie Bevan is a passionate leader and believer in museums as places of belonging, imagination, and transformation. In 2022, London was lucky because she joined Museum London as executive director. Before coming to London, Julie spent over a decade in Nanaimo, BC, on Snuneymuxw territory, where she served in roles at the City of Nanaimo and Nanaimo Art Gallery, collaborating with artists and creative teams to realize contemporary art projects and learning programs, revitalizing cultural spaces, and building organizational capacity and community. She has served in positions at Glenbow Museum in Calgary, Belkin Art Gallery in Vancouver, and the National Gallery of Canada, which is, of course, in Ottawa. And she's been involved with Canadian Art Museums Directors Organization, the BC Museums Association, and others as a part of commitment to learning, mentorship, and contributing to a thriving sector. Julie holds a BA Honors from Carleton University in Art History from 2004, an MA in Critical and Curatorial Studies from the University of British Columbia 2006, and was a fellow at the Getty Leadership Institute 2017. Perhaps most importantly, she's raising 2 children with her partner, Chad. I just want to acknowledge that's a really big job, too. Julie's presentation today is titled Honoring and Amplifying Interconnections, How Museum London Will Meet This Moment. Please join me in welcoming Julie Bevan.
Thank you so much for that introduction. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me back there, Greg? Thumbs up. And I'll just get these slides going. Here we are. Thank you so much for the kind invitation to speak with you this afternoon. It's a real pleasure to be together with you. As I begin, I want to acknowledge the lands and the waters and their traditional stewards, the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, the Lenape-Wauk, and the Attawandaron. Museum London, where I am spending many of my days now, is located at the forks of the Deshkan-Zibing Thames River, and it's a site that's been a gathering place and a place of interconnection and convergence and exchange for thousands of years. We are grateful for the generosity and the contributions, past, present, and future, of Indigenous artists, knowledge keepers, leaders, elders from many nations, and from our closest neighbors, Munsee, Delaware, Chippewa of the Thames, and Oneida. I am personally grateful for learning from Snuneymuxw, Dene, and Tsimshian mentors, and I aim to conduct myself here in this place with a good heart, good mind. And I've opened with this beautiful artwork by Jamili Hassan, who's joining us in the audience today. I have 3 things on my agenda for this time together this afternoon. So first, I'm going to start by telling you a bit about myself and highlight a few of my most beloved recent projects as a way of pointing to how I've come to this place in my professional practice, how I see the intersections of art, communities, and history, and what keeps me motivated to do this work. Second, I'm going to share some of the things that I've learned so far this year since joining the team at Museum London and talk about where our organization is headed next, how Museum London will meet this moment. And third, I'm going to invite you to ask questions about anything that I've said and share feedback. We're testing out ideas right now about the museum's directions and are in a critical stage of gathering feedback, so I'd welcome your thoughts. Sound good? I got the idea as a teen that museums were my calling. I was flipping through the career section of the Globe and Mail when I came across a job advert for the position of senior curator at the Vancouver Art Gallery. I hadn't been to BC yet or West of Ontario at that point. I was 16, and frankly, I didn't understand what a curator really did, but I clipped it out. I pinned it to the bulletin board in my bedroom, and I set my mind to it. I grew up in Fonthill and Welland, not too far from London, and my town did not have the type of culture and heritage ecosystem that has been built here. We didn't have a place like Museum London with its building or its vast collection, or an artist-run center like Forest City Gallery. We didn't have the Macintosh, or the distinction of being a UNESCO City of Music like London is now. And we didn't have public schools named for artists. But I was fortunate that on special occasions, my parents would take me to the AGO or to the ROM, 2 hours or so away in downtown Toronto. And these places ignited in me a sense of curiosity and wonder and a feeling of belonging with art and a whole world of ideas that felt completely unique and freeing. This newspaper clipping from the Globe and Mail on the screen, it became this little embodiment of my dream. And it came along with me from bulletin board to bulletin board when I moved to Ottawa to study art history and worked leading children's programs at the National Gallery. This clipping traveled west when I moved to the coast and went to undertake graduate studies at UBC, and eventually in one move or another, it didn't make it back up on the bulletin board. It was out of sight but not out of mind, and I came across it again in 2017, 20 years after I had originally clipped it out. And coincidentally, it was the very moment when I was working on a project at the Getty Leadership Institute to imagine 20 years into the future, how museum practice would change and how I would change with it. So I'm sharing this story with you to give you insights on who I am. I'm certainly a keeper of things, someone who invests meaning and emotion in objects, perfect for museum work in that regard. And I have a clear sense of purpose, I'm tenacious, and I have long-term vision. Before I talk about Museum London, I'll rewind a bit and share about some of the projects I've worked on in the recent past that were really foundational to my learning and to my leadership practice and inform the way that I think about art, history, communities, collaboration, and the way that we make meaning. Oops. I served as executive director at Nanaimo Art Gallery between 2012 and 2020. Nanaimo is on Snuneymuxw territory on the eastern edge of Vancouver Island in BC. It's often called the harbor city or the hub city. And it's a gateway to the island and to other Gulf islands. Ferries, float planes come and go. It has a deep sea port, and increasingly tankers dot the coastline. Nanaimo is nestled between Mount Benson and the Salish Sea. It has small lakes and rivers, and the population of the city is around 100,000 people, with about 250,000 in the region. Once a coal mining town, industry in Nanaimo has shifted to what is described now as a knowledge-based economy. While I was there, my work was centered around transforming Nanaimo Art Gallery, working collaboratively with a small, dedicated team to make it more relevant, more sustainable, and to make it a place for learning about and learning through contemporary art. Over a period of 8 years, we more than doubled the size of our staff team. It was very small to begin with. We grew our operating budget by something like 120% by creating these streams of revenue and attracting investment, which importantly translated to more opportunities for artists to create and show work, and more opportunities for audiences to experience art. Transformation involved radical changes to our physical gallery spaces. We gave up the purpose-built gallery building on the campus of Vancouver Island University to expand our footprint downtown in what had previously been a small satellite location for the gallery. We entered into a new partnership to take over and to operate this city-owned building. We renovated and we stewarded relationships with nonprofit tenants who have office space there too. We opened Art Lab, which in Nanaimo is a street-facing center for hands-on learning, and we invested in art education to create staff positions and programs and to invite more people in. The image on the screen shows art educator Amber Morrison working with children in the gallery around an artwork by Maggie Grote, which she made for our exhibition Dream Islands, curated by Jessie Birch and Emma Metcalf-Hurst. And importantly, we built relationships across communities. As a way of making contemporary art accessible and relevant to the lives, experiences, and concerns of people in the region, and as a way of underpinning an organizational orientation towards learning, we focused our artistic program around an inquiry-based model. That is, all of our exhibitions and all of our activities would be framed as responses to a central open-ended question. For example, one year we asked, what does it mean to live on an island? In another, our question was, how can we speak differently? And another year we asked, what are generations? This was a way to create entry points into contemporary art projects, to build connections between contemporary art practice and the histories of the people and the region, and to work in a way that embraced an expanded field of art practice and allowed for experts across many disciplines into our programs: elders, academics, ethnobotanists, foresters, scientists, writers, poets. We were able to build partnerships locally, but also internationally. I loved working there with this brilliant, passionate team, working alongside curator Jessie Birch, whose vision brought and set local artists in dialogue with artists from further afield. Many created new work that responded directly to our context. Projects by Marianne Nicholson, Jinmi Yoon, Arva Leo, Ron Tran, Eleanor King, Dwayne Linklater, Christabel Stewart, and Patrick Cruz were among my favorites. But there are many others, and taking risks, experimenting, and being agile in our way of working was possible because of the size and the character of our organization. When I think back on all of the good days, and there were lots of them, there were many. One of the best stands out, and I was asked recently to talk about my best day ever at work, so we'll share it here with you too. It was a day in October 2018. It was beautiful, sunny. The fall air was warm, and that day we closed down part of the street in front of the gallery. It's the main street downtown, and we held a community celebration. It was a street party that was open to the public. And the street party was the culmination of a lot of big work, and in a way it was also a new kind of beginning. We were celebrating renovations to the facade of our building after a couple of rounds of interior renovations. And we were celebrating the installation of a newly commissioned sculpture by Snuneymuxw father and son team William and Joel Good called Supernatural Eagle, Bringing the Sun Back to the World. This carving was made by William and Joel to be installed over the entranceway of the gallery prior to this, maybe 2 or so years earlier, before we really got to know him well. Elder William Good candidly told us that he was disappointed that Snuneymuxw art, Hulkaminam art, didn't have a place at the gallery in our program or in downtown Nanaimo. It had been erased and rendered invisible, and it was hurtful. Because we had a team who were collaborative and responsive, because we were able to build trust, we commissioned a new public artwork by William and Joel. They took the lead and decided what it should look like, what the story should communicate, And so Supernatural Eagle Bringing the Sun Back to the World is a painted cedar carving based on a family story, a Snuneymuxw creation story. The street party was to welcome the new artwork, to honor the artists and their family. We had undertaken a crowdfunding campaign to help realize the project, and many people stepped up to contribute. By that time, our staff was learning and practicing Hulkaminam greetings as a way of supporting language learners, and we had Hulkaminam welcome signage inside the door. The street party day included performances by musician Willie Thrasher, a feast with salmon and bannock, Snuneymuxw singers, distinguished elders, neighbors, artists, friends, many families, and more. One of my teammates, she's now retired, she was the longest serving employee of the gallery at the time. She had been there for some 20 years. She said on that day that it was her proudest in all of the days and weeks that she had ever worked at the gallery. And so because of this, because of the energy and the connection and the emotion that was invested in this project, it stands out as one of my best days too. And Supernatural Eagle created a shift. Good leaders know when their part of the job is done and when it's time to let go. And so, when the opportunity arose at the City of Nanaimo to take on a newly formed role called Manager of Culture and Events, I made the move, which I didn't know would coincide with the start of the global pandemic. I learned a lot during a short time about municipal systems and bureaucracy, human resources, about myself. And with a small but mighty team, the work was to oversee 5 cultural facilities, the Art Gallery, 2 museums, 2 theaters, to oversee public art, and to make sustaining, operating, and project grants to something like 50 organizations. Events were in our portfolio too, but COVID quieted that part of the work. During a short time, even during the pandemic, or perhaps because of it, we were able to make some really excellent things happen. Supported by City Council, we made the first city grants directly to artists, funding 13 projects through a one-time resilience grant to support production and presentation of creative work. We participated in the development of the city's strategic plan, and we were able to commission new works, a poem by the youth poet laureate Valina Zanetti, an illustration about the future of Nanaimo by Sebastian Aboud, and a song by Sonnet LeBay, which was about the experience of being Black in Nanaimo. These were conceptualized as creative inputs, injections of creative voice and art into a city planning process. The image on the screen is Sonnet on the stage at the Port Theatre. It was shut down at the time, but we were able to get in and work with the team to record a video on their stage. And because of the timing and tenacity of our small team, we were able to realize several ambitious public art projects that have transformed space and whose impact is still continuing to unfold. The one that I will share with you is called He He Sepasroch Atu Thichram Ka Ikwatla, Sacred Gathering of the Freshwater and Saltwater. My pronunciation is not ideal. It is a project by Colossal 10, Elliot Whitehill, and it was made in 2020 and 2021 for Bevan Park Pool. It's an indoor aquatic center where people of all ages practice, splash, play. There's a hot tub and a sauna, a pool for laps and diving and lessons, a winding lazy river, and a warm teaching pool for the youngest swimmers. When the pool had to close because of the pandemic, we seized on an opportunity to undertake a public art project, and we struck up a conversation with Elliot, who is a young Coast Salish artist, an author, and a storyteller. We asked him to consider the purpose of the facility. It's a community center. It's an accessible gathering place designed to promote health and wellness and connection. And the pool's playful water features are shaped like frogs and fish. Because these were destined to remain in place, we asked Elliot to explore themes of the estuary. An estuary is a place where fresh water and salt water meet. This mixing provides high levels of nutrients, making estuaries among the most productive natural habitats in the world. So taking the Nanaimo River estuary as his jumping off point and inspired by teachings from his late great-grandmother, we supported Elliot to realize a multifaceted project which centers Snuneymuxw knowledge, histories, and language which come from the land on which Nanaimo was built and which have existed for thousands of years. This was Elliot's first public art project. He's emerging in his practice as an artist, but he's a person of super clear and sharp vision since he's gone on to Emily Carr in Vancouver to work on his MFA. When we initiated the project, Elliot didn't yet have deep experience executing art projects. He hadn't painted a mural yet, and this ambitious endeavor ended up involving 3 large-scale murals, a series of 12-foot banners that suspend from the ceiling and float above the pool, an activity book with drawings and stories by Elliot, audio recordings, and a video. Snuneymuxw stories about salmon, about transformation, about the beings of the estuary are the basis for his designs, and he retells these stories in his own voice in the book, aiming them at young audiences and injecting them with humor. The booklet was made available for free, both as a PDF and as a physical takeaway at the pool, and it was also circulated to schools. At the pool, we made accessible interpretive signage that included Hulkaminam and English names for the beings of the estuary, and Hulkaminam was integrated into the murals as well. We used QR codes to link to recordings of Elliot's voice to make it possible to hear him speak the stories. This acknowledged oral tradition. It made the works and the stories accessible and allows listeners to hear pronunciation of Hulkaminam words. Language learning and practice were one of Elliot's objectives. He and members of his family were studying language, and he infused it into his project. To support this work, we assembled a team of people, several of whom were new to each other. It involved myself, Ellison Collins, my city colleague, also a curator and co-leader. It involved curator Jessie Birch from Nanaimo Art Gallery, a graphic designer to mentor Elliot and to work on the book. Snuneymuxw elders and leaders who consulted closely on the artworks and the designs at several points in the project and on the use of language. Mural painters to work with Elliot to implement his designs, and city facilities staff and aquatic staff who were open-hearted in the way that they stepped up to help and allowed the project to unfold. On his vision for the project, Elliot said, "I want to show other people who we are. I want future generations of Coast Salish people to grow up surrounded by our art. I want to honor our territory by wrapping it in the blanket of our art once more." This image on the screen shows the small gathering we held to honor the work and Elliot, and this was the first artwork by a Snuneymuxw artist commissioned for a city recreation facility. There were lots of takeaways for me from this project about risk-taking and trust and mentorship and collaboration, being ready to take advantage of opportunities when they present themselves, profound, rich lessons on Snuneymuxw ways and worldviews, about the interconnectedness and the sacred nature of all life, and about how art can work in public space. And because of these projects that I've been fortunate to be a part of, because I've been lucky to have worked in different capacities in museums and galleries, both at front of house in a very direct way and also on the administrative side, on structures and systems and managing resources, I've had a front row seat and have experienced from different angles the moments when sparks fly between people and ideas, between audiences and artwork. These are moments of wonder, of discovery, surprise, connection, and openings to new understandings. Because of all of these moments and impacts, I'm endlessly passionate and optimistic about the potential of art and histories and museums to help people grow. Help people grow into themselves as creative agents, critical thinkers, as empathetic citizens, and museums, or rather I should say those who work with and inside museums, have the potential to transform lives and to influence and catalyze change in our communities by both drawing people into our spaces and by going out to meet people where they are. On the screen, I'm showing you a picture of outside and good things growing. This is a view, a little bit blurry on this screen, from Center at the Forks, and it's Ron Benner's garden and his work As the Crow Flies. It looks a lot different right now. Ron, I'm really happy that you're here today. Since arriving in London, Ontario, and joining the team at Museum London almost a year ago now, I've been exploring here with our board, staff, volunteers, our circle of supporters, and community leaders from many sectors what we should aspire to next, what people dream of for Museum London, and what people need from it. This is a photo of our core staff team taken last May at our AGM. I was away sick that day and haven't photoshopped myself in. I haven't had the chance. This is the moment when the photographer asked everyone to make a funny face, so this one's my fave. I will assume that most of you in this audience know Museum London and have experienced it by accessing it as a resource for learning, entertainment, inspiration, fun. For those of you who may be less familiar, our museum offers an ongoing mix of historical and contemporary art exhibitions that have regional and national resonance, and exhibitions of London's cultural heritage that bring local histories into focus. On the screen is a shot of the museum at night with a newly commissioned work by artist Kalamoya projected through the windows. Our public and educational programs serve various audiences and often use exhibitions and collections as a springboard. And a lineup of memorable special events inside the museum and in the community are offered throughout the year to connect diverse people to art, ideas, and each other. The museum cares for significant collections. Over 45,000 artifacts reflect the colonial history of London, and artworks numbering over 5,000, both historical and contemporary, by regional and Canadian artists are in the collection. Aiming to be an accessible cultural resource, admission to the museum and to many of our activities is free or by donation. And to round out the experience, we have 2 cafes, the River Room and the Rhino Lounge, come have coffee, and the shop, which carries a thoughtful selection of goods, including the books that are produced by Londoners and by the museum that extend and document exhibitions and art practice. We rent our spaces for events, which brings in people who might not otherwise come through our doors, and it creates a stream of income to support our activities. Our place has a long history. It was established in 1940 as the London Regional Art Gallery, and it operated from the London Public Library until 1980, when its new home, designed by the renowned Canadian architect Raymond Moriyama, was opened. In 1989, the London Regional Art Gallery amalgamated with the London Historical Museum, setting a new course for this organization, art and history together under one roof. Most recently, in 2018, Centre at the Forks was created, which opens up the museum to the river and serves as a beautiful, flexible venue for programs of all kinds. As part of the Centre at the Forks, an education studio allows hands-on learning and making. Outside, we have a terrace that overlooks the river. In the summer, it's shaded by a glorious maple. And the museum's ground hosts outdoor artworks and gardens, like Ron Benner's work, and of course, the Rhino by Tom Benner, which has become iconic in London. Our outdoor spaces link to the City of London's ambitions for the Dundas Street community event space as well. As an eager newcomer and learner, I focused my first several months at the museum around discovery, strategy, connection, beginning to know the people, the place, the personality of our building, and understand the broad shape of the collection. Now, several months in, we are in the middle of building a strategic plan to guide our trajectory for the next 5 years. We're now at the phase where we're going out to test our ideas, to gather feedback and insights, both from community leaders who are already close to the museum and those that we want to draw closer. We started our strategic planning process in September by asking why. Why does Museum London exist? What are we here for? Who are we here for? What are the reasons that underlie this work in art and history? These can be challenging and complex questions to answer, but also quite fun. And so brave, committed, good-humored board members embarked on a series of non-linear, exploratory conversations with the goal of articulating our purpose in 7 words or less. The thinking is, having a succinct purpose statement will help rally people in our big circle to internalize, to understand, and to see our purpose activated in our work together every day. So where we've landed is here, honoring and amplifying our interconnections. I'll dwell here for a minute on this statement to unpack it and to elaborate on the meaning. Our purpose statement prioritizes relationships. Interconnection points to the ways that we're linked. It invites us to look beyond ourselves, beyond art and history, to the outside world, and to understand ourselves as being part of ecosystems, increasingly responsive and adaptive and accountable. And to recognize interconnection is to recognize complexity. We are connected through the natural world, through human-built systems, knowledges, through geography and time. In our case, a museum with a mandate for both art and history, interconnection holds open the doors to possibilities for how we think about and undertake our work. The word honoring centers thoughtfulness, care. It means to regard with great respect. It can mean to fulfill an obligation or to keep an agreement. Amplifying suggests action towards growth. It means to expand, to make larger or greater, to increase the strength of. And, of course, this word gives us the collective that makes up Museum London. It gives us ownership and agency. It is expansive too, and you are included in our. This purpose does not constitute a wild departure from the work that the museum has been doing. It's a statement that allows us to have shared language and a shared understanding to help us rationalize and position all of our activities going forward, from making decisions about programs like exhibitions, collections, education, and events, to how we deploy our precious resources and how we organize ourselves internally. So it permeates everything we do, and the purpose will help align many parts of our organization, which sometimes, as in any institution, don't always work cohesively or feel like they're in sync with one another. With this purpose in mind, we have set our sights on 5 strategic directions, which we're in the process of testing out now. These will help us focus on our next moves as an organization. I'm going to share these 5 directions with you in no particular order. They're not structured by hierarchy, but I do like lists. Number 1, fully embrace interdisciplinarity. Activate art and history in dialogue in new, ambitious, and creative ways. Museum London is unique in that its scope includes both art and history. This is one of our special, but not yet fully realized superpowers, and there are only a few other examples of museums in Canada who do this. Often our 2 different collections and our ways of working within them exist in tension. And the unresolved nature of these 2 streams, competing sometimes for attention, resources, space, this can cause confusion about who we are as Museum London, what we can do, and who it's all for. One of the exciting challenges that's in front of us now is how to fully realize the potential of these 2 streams, art and history, in dialogue with each other, and further unlock the potential of their interconnections. This will require new, more holistic approaches to how we work together and collaborate and plan. It requires a different internal mindset. More fully embracing and activating interdisciplinarity will require new strategies for interpretation, for storytelling, for exhibition design, and for communication. On the screen, you'll see Stay Safe. It's an object from our material culture collection, acquired by the museum last year. It's also an artwork by Noel Reiser. It's plywood hoarding that covered the windows of 2 shops on Richmond Row in 2020. Focus area number 2, raise the profile, a hidden gem no more. One of the things that came to the foreground in our last round of community consultation in 2021 is that our museum could be better known, especially locally, and better understood by Londoners. It's often referred to as a hidden gem. Many people don't know what we do or feel like it belongs to them, and we need to find compelling ways to tell people who we are, what we do, and why it matters. Part of raising the profile involves a refreshed, energized brand identity, new communication and marketing strategies, more storytelling about the many partnerships and collaborations the museum undertakes locally, and the ways that we share artwork and ideas from London across the country. Even in the context of a museum, people are more important than objects. We need to pay more attention to understanding how and why people use the museum, and we need to understand and improve the visitor journey, the experience that we're offering when people take the time to make their way to our place and through our front doors, and when they visit us online. So another of our strategic directions is transform audience experience, a people-centered approach. So this calls for refreshed physical and online spaces that reflect the caliber and the dynamism of our programs and that reinforce our purpose. I'm a fan of Nina Simon's work. Perhaps you know her books, The Participatory Museum and The Art of Relevance. These have influenced my own thinking about museum practice. And she says, if you're going to open new doors, especially doors to the heart, you have to start at the front door. You have to show that you're inviting people in on their own terms, with generosity, humility, and a nod to what speaks to them. Effective front door greeters have people who look like your community welcoming them at the door, speaking their language, providing entry points that match the keys they use every day to unlock meaning. Enhancing visitor experience, making our museum a more attractive place for people to visit, to use, to come back to, necessitates that we reinvest in the tools that we provide for people to make meaning, for interpretation, and to think holistically across our organization. How can we balance intellectual rigor with accessibility? What are the languages of our work? What else do we need to provide visitors with? How can their experience become less passive and more participatory, as people have come to expect? In the book Active Collections, shared with me by my colleague, Dr. Amber Lloyd-Langston, one of the core arguments is that the conversations in museums needs to change from caring about artifacts to caring about people, that there are changes that we could make in the museum system that would help us treat the people in our communities more like family. In their chapter, author Rainey Tisdale writes, the entire museum system continues to be organized around caring for artifacts. At a basic level, there's a calculus of proximal contact. The objects are under our roof every day, and we develop long-term relationships with them. We're trained to learn everything we can about them, to treat them like family. Meanwhile, people come and go, and the ones who need us most rarely cross the threshold. Tisdale writes, we keep starting with objects. We have all this stuff. How can we get other people to care about it as much as we do? Instead of starting with people. The communities we serve have needs. How could we use our stuff to address them? At Museum London, Amber, who's our curator of regional history, is working on a project now for our main Ivy galleries that opens this fall, and it reverses this typical museum approach. She is indeed looking outside the walls of the museum and starting with people, inviting them in to share personal stories. For Resilient Londoners, Amber's collaborating with some 80 or so people across the city, some of whom she connected with personally, and some who's responded to an open call. They've identified and are loaning objects of personal significance, objects that embody a story of resilience. These will be shared as part of an exhibition which is taking shape now. And I'm using this beautiful photo from the Corn Roast on August 21st because I think it embodies this idea of hospitality and treating people with care and generosity and humility. Direction number 4, strengthened organizational capacity and sustainability. To realize our vision, any vision, Museum London must support the flourishing of our teams by designing a workplace culture that truly prioritizes collaboration, creativity, communication, and learning so people are motivated, empowered, and feel ready to do their best work. As a leader, I know that people are our greatest asset. They're our most precious resource, and that our collaboration is the key to every success. Sustainability requires that as an organization, we make strategic choices to devote precious resources, brain power, time, money, in service of activities that align with our purpose and have the courage to let other activities go. This area of focus is also about nurturing a culture of philanthropy around the museum and developing new streams of revenue that line up with our purpose so we have the flexibility and the resources to realize our dreams. And it means attracting new generations of people who want to invest in the museum and use it in different ways. It means being open to new kinds of partnerships. Our fifth area of focus: principles of diversity, access, inclusion, equity, and belonging are anchored into the culture of our organization and in action every day. We're proud of the fact that admission to the museum is free and that our activities are low cost. We should be proud, but we know that other barriers exist. Very good work has been done already to ensure that our programs, our exhibitions, and collections reflect the diversity of the people of this region and this country. But now we need to be ready to deepen a commitment to this work. We know that there are systemic barriers in arts and culture in most organizations, and certainly in colonial institutions like museums. And these barriers have created a persistent lack of equity, diversity, and inclusion. And they've created and continue to create harm. Looking ahead, our focus is on taking more intentional action to become truly inclusive at every level of our organization, to more equitably reflect the diverse communities we aim to serve and fully realize the museum as an accessible resource for everyone, a safe place of belonging. This involves examination of our policies, our procedures, our systems, hiring practices through a new lens in consultation with communities. This is a holistic change towards inclusion and equity and hard work, but not radical. It's work that everyone expects us to be doing, including funders like Canada Council and the City of London, and organizations in which we hold membership, such as the Canadian Museums Association. Underpinning these 5 directions is a vision that the museum is relevant because of the ways our initiatives connect to the pressing social, environmental, and economic issues of our time. Art and history are powerful tools for inspiration, for healing, for learning, for dreaming, for imagination and play. Throughout history, museums have been powerful tools used to reinforce dominant narratives about cultural identity, to celebrate and to show off innovation and human creativity, to display wealth and privilege and victory. Now, with the understanding that museums are not neutral, museums are mobilizing their power and their influence to different ends: community participation, civic engagement, to catalyzing creativity, to contribute to social change. Our museum must always be a go-to for entertainment, for fun. That's a prerequisite. But at the same time, honoring and amplifying our interconnections requires that we continue to look outside of our own practices of art and history, stretch outside our walls, our disciplines, our sector, our comfort zones, to address challenges of our time. And this is an important way that we can make our work matter to more people and impact the everyday lives of people in this region. So as we work together to meet this moment, and we think about what we want to become in 5 years, in 10 years, in 100 years, some of the questions that we want to keep front and center are: how will the museum contribute to community resilience and sustainability? How will we become increasingly relevant to people in the face of economic, social, environmental, and cultural change? How are we taking up our responsibility to advance truth and reconciliation? How are we demonstrating every day a commitment to anti-racism and anti-oppression and contribute to a more just and loving world? And at a time like this, how can our museum promote health, physical and mental? What are the ways we can support healing? In the ways that we respond to these questions, we need to be open to risk-taking, to experimentation, to learning, to making course corrections when we need to. As a shaper of values and to cultivate a broad audience, Museum London will increasingly become a service-oriented, people-focused gathering place, a dynamic living expression of the people of southwestern Ontario, our ambitions, our place in the world. It can be a refuge and a safe place of belonging, an inspiring destination, the place we take our kids, the place that you bring your date, and the place that you're proud to show off to your out-of-town friends, and a place that cherishes and promotes creativity as essential in all aspects of our lives, and that shapes creative problem solvers, the curious, critical thinkers, and the empathetic citizens that our communities and the world needs now. Thank you. This is the end of my prepared presentation. I'm ending with this beautiful photo of the Bell family standing in the exhibition of work by Gathy Falk called Revelations. Come and join us and stand in front of these works yourselves. And I'd like to thank you for participating and invite you to ask any questions or provide any feedback on anything I've raised today.
Julie, thank you so much. That was actually really inspiring. I think all of us feel energized about the museum, but also about like what we're doing every day in our own lives. And so thank you so much for that. I think we all need that right now. We have time for questions, and I think questions might be an important part of this event. So I'd like to invite anybody who would like to ask a question of Julie. Randy. Jen's coming up with the microphone.
Thanks, Julie. That was great. You didn't talk a lot about the relationship between the museum and the university. I wonder if you could elaborate a little bit on some of the ways that there can be collaboration between the museum and the university.
Do you need us to repeat the question, Greg?
No.
Collaborations between the university and Museum London is your question. Yes. So I think that one of the things that I have observed and learned in my time here, there is an impression that Museum London doesn't have a lot of collaborations and partnerships that exist. And over the course of my almost year here now, one of the things that I have observed is Museum London has a startling number of partnerships and collaborations, including with Western in different ways. Art Now comes to mind. We have a joint talk next week, March 16th, with Angie Quick and Dr. Joel Paflak. But I think that partnerships are how we get work done. Collaboration is how we get work done and how we build momentum. And I think that there are many exciting ways to refine and evolve the way that we work together and to understand the outcomes that we're endeavoring to achieve together. And we're really delighted at the moment to have partnerships with the visual arts faculty. We've worked with SASA this year with a great event with Ivan Coyote. And being open to explore what the future holds, knowing that Western and Museum London have a limited number of resources, but unlimited amount of brain power and energy. So harnessing that and applying it to things in the future, I think, open door.
So piggybacking on that question.
I'm Tammy Kegley. Oops, sorry. Piggybacking on that question, that suggests a certain barrier that exists, real or imagined, in getting the word out about what's going on. And I've noticed that. Welcome to London. I'm also relatively new to London myself and am especially interested in cultural opportunities like Museum London. So how do we go forward to let people know what's going on? How will you guys do that? How will you build that?
Thank you for your question. I didn't go into all the nitty-gritty details of our strategic plan. But when we talk about raising the profile, I mean, definitely the way that we celebrate, share stories, communicate the value of our work, let people know what's going on in the ways that they want to receive information, this is a very top priority. And certainly from a Museum London point of view, we've got a lot to celebrate, and inviting people in and making people feel welcome is at the top of the list. Did that answer your question?
That is, yes, of course, is what I would say.
Yeah.
That answer.
Yeah.
Yes, of course, invite us in. But the challenge and maybe there isn't an answer in getting the word out.
You're talking about specific mechanisms
Knowing,
for
knowing
promotion?
what's going on, and
Yeah.
how do we collaborate? Because there's so much going on.
Mm-hmm.
And so very often you don't hear about something until it's like, oh, I would love to have been a part of that. I didn't hear about it. And particularly when you think you're plugged into things, but it's like, oh, I didn't hear about that. So are you hearing that in other directions, or do you have plans to expand on communications?
We definitely have plans to expand on communications, and it's interesting. And we're in the middle of a process of having face-to-face interviews with 25 community leaders. We're doing focus groups and online surveys. And in a lot of the conversations that we've been having, something that we've been hearing a lot of is, oh my gosh, I don't even have time to read your emails. You send these emails. Email is no longer the way. I prefer text. I prefer phone calls.
I love an email.
Okay. Well, we're going to sign you up before you get out the door, so you get our email. Okay.
I mean, because in the words of Matthew Barney,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, social media is the river of fundament. It just rolls, and if you don't have to attach it, when I see an email in my inbox, so please don't let anyone poo-poo that. When I see that in an email and it is something that I'm interested in, I open it. I may not open other emails, but I get there. So, a little feedback.
Yeah, well, thank you. And I think really like being aware that there are so many different channels that we need to be participating in and different and being flexible. And there are so many different ways that people want to receive information and the types of information that people want to receive. Sometimes it's bite size, and now more and more bite size. And but there are other people who want to hear from us. They want personal phone calls and mail at their doorstep. So we need to be really strategic about who are the audiences that we are endeavoring to attract for each particular kind of program, event, collection, exhibition, and focus in to be able to be as precise as possible with the way that we're communicating. And growing our capacity to be able to do that as well is really significant. And we do have, my teammate Linda O'Connor is here with me this afternoon. She's our new head of marketing and development. She just joined our team in November. So this is the work that Linda is undertaking together with our team now.
Great. We have a question from from Zoom. We have a great online audience that's held in and is watching from home all over, actually, Canada. Question from Linda Burdick. Question is, the experimental aspect of what you intend to accomplish intrigues me. How will you get feedback from your community members about the success of your future exhibits and programs? Thanks
for that question. There's this article that Holland Cotter, who's an American art critic, wrote, I think in 2015, and he was writing about the museum of the 21st century and what it will look like. 8 years old now, but there are, I always think of this line in it about the museum of the 21st century being structurally porous and perpetually in progress. And so in thinking about that, I don't think that there is like an end point to the work, and into the work needs to be built and into our strategic plan, which will have, as good plans do, performance targets, and we'll be using it on an ongoing basis. But I think building in loops of continuous feedback we're working on that now in terms of our internal culture at Museum London, and also creating opportunities for people to respond to museum activities in different ways. The last big community consultation that was undertaken was in 2021, but Museum London does quarterly put out there to the community questions an invitation for input on what people want to see, how we're performing in different aspects. So I think building that in and being ready then to accept that feedback and understand and be able to use it, process it, and use it and decide where it will take you is also the other really important element.
We're just going to bring the mic so they can hear you online.
Thank you. So I truly believe that the future is promoted by youth. And so my question is, how do you get youth involved with the museum so that it is exposed and it is communicated to, of course, from those young people, whether they be 10 or 17, then they expand to more people. So an example would be to have class or school tours or even presentations into the school as exposure. So do you have any of those plans in place?
Yeah, you'll be happy to know that school programs and tours are back in business after COVID. And so we're seeing huge numbers of students come out to, we have a large contingent of passionate tour guide volunteers who work with students and who make connections between curriculum and what we have at the museum. So this work is ongoing, and we have a program called Making Art, Creating Community. I had a little image of it in my slideshow. Actually, one of the barriers that we're experiencing right now beyond our control and looking for ways, we need to find ways to get around this. Students want to come, teachers want to bring them, but there are busing restrictions, and so there are external forces that are preventing that program from really growing right now. Restrictions in that there are labor shortages, and it's hard to get school buses to bring kids to Museum London. But this, schools are one way. Also creating a museum experience that is inviting for families, and so that they know when they get there there's something for them to do, and changing audience experience now. People come with the expectation that there will be something interactive to undertake, that you can touch things and give your opinion and make something. And so we need to build that in. We've got a great coordinator of family and youth and outreach programs right now, Sarah. She's doing great work, making sensory bags, creating all kinds of activities, going out into the community. So this is definitely a priority, and we have to keep building on that.
Hi. First, I had a comment just to say that I loved your talk so much. I really appreciate how often you mentioned the ideas of care, love, community connection. Those are all really important values to me. I'm not the youngest person that you could be talking to, but as a 30-year-old and someone who grew up in Chatham that had a pretty good arts community, I would say, as a young person. One thing that brought us to places when we were in our late teens was kind of the hospitality aspect. I think it's really great that you're focusing on that, because I think sometimes exhibitions can feel really institutional to younger people, and I think that is not always the easiest way to draw them into a space. So thinking about the expertise of the hospitality of the place as well. Even as young people, if you hear that a cafe makes really great coffee, that's something that's going to bring people to the place, right? And I think thinking about that aspect of food, hospitality, and how that can be interwoven into the gathering place of the museum, as well as thinking about museum hours. When is the space accessible to people? Because, teens from 13 to 17 are looking for cool places to spend their time, they can't go to bars, but they want places that they can spend time together. So like focusing on that, expertise of hospitality when the place is accessible, and how you might draw people there. And then kind of tangentially, they will be in the space with the art, right? So things like events like maybe coffee houses where people are doing live music up until 9 p.m. or something like that could be an interesting way to bring younger people into the space.
Thank you. Agreed.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I have a question. What is the best way for an artist to connect to London Museum? I'm not asking about myself. I'm here with my father, who recently arrived from Ukraine, and he's an honorable Ukrainian artist with countless exhibitions, and like he's working permanent expositions of museums in Ukraine as well. And I find myself in the position where I would like to help him to connect with the artwork world here in Canada as well. What would you suggest in this regard? Thank you.
Thanks for your question. One thing that I have found since coming to London is that people here are so welcoming and generous, and this is an arts community that is very willing to welcome new people and in a loving way. People bring you food, people invite you over to their house. In terms of Museum London, we are fortunate that we have an excellent curatorial team, and part of their work is to undertake studio visits, to be researching out there, meeting artists. Often our curators are working on visiting people and building mental databases of information for future projects, future exhibitions. And so that's a good way. I mean, connecting directly with some of our staff members, coming out to participate. We at Museum London frequently have activities where there are many artists in the room, and embarking on, getting to know those people. Who else has an answer for this? I'm not sure this answer is leading down the right path. But I will say that Museum London, ringing us up and scheduling a studio visit is something that we do all the time. And same way to meet other curators from the Macintosh Gallery, from Forest City Gallery. It's by showing up and introducing yourself and getting involved. Is what I have found. Is there any other good input? I know we've got other expertise out here who are welcoming people all the time.
I'll amplify that, absolutely. Showing up and knocking on a door.
Right. Introducing yourself and showing up and knocking on a door, introducing yourself and saying, particularly if you have visuals, welcome to Canada.
Yes, welcome.
First of all, thank you for an absolutely thrilling talk. It's really wonderful for you to have come. It seems to me that you've addressed both how do you bring the community into the museum? How does the community go out? How does the museum go out to the community? And one of the things I find myself thinking as you're talking specifically is, okay, how does that interface with the questions of truth and reconciliation? One of the things we see sometimes in the university is that students are very happy to bring in Indigenous people into the classroom, but a lot of times, and not just students, people are they're somewhat nervous about going to the actual Indigenous communities, and it makes me wonder. I know from people that I know that there's a lot of artistic work going on in the Indigenous communities, a lot of young people making art. Are there ways for the museum to go out into some of these communities? Can a person have an art installation at the Elgin residential school site? I often discover that people often don't even know where these, where Munsee Nation is. So how are the ways that the museum both bringing in Indigenous art but also going to Indigenous communities can do some of the work of truth and reconciliation?
Thanks for your question. That's a hard one. I'm learning the context here, which is much different than the context where I've lived and worked in Nanaimo, in BC, on Snuneymuxw territory. And and meeting new people and putting yourself out there, it can be tricky, it can be difficult and uncomfortable. But I think, the way that I have done it so far as a new person is to ask people and to go out and knock on doors and to send notes and say, I would love to meet you and let's have coffee. Let me know when you're ready to talk. And also, going along without expectations of wanting something, in a way that is to genuinely strike up a conversation and to get to know each other. And that is how you build a relationship with anyone, I would say. Less transactional expectation and more investment and understanding that Museum London is not everyone's top priority, as urgent as I feel about it. The timing has to be right for people from Indigenous communities to want to participate, and we need to make open invitations and to get out there. So far, I have visited Chippewa of the Thames and was able to connect with people who work and live there before I came, and Oneida, because one of the things that I learned from Snuneymuxw elders, including Elder Gary Manson, is you have to ask. You have to go out there and ask and to be ready. And you may not like how it goes, but putting yourself out there. Again, I'm not sure if that's the best answer, but I hope there's a spark of something useful in there.
I think that's the best answer. I think there's a question online if you're willing to keep going.
Yeah, we have a question from Ruth Skinner, who's watching from home. Ruth also expresses her warm thoughts on the talk. Would you speak about a specific challenge, either locally or more broadly within public arts institutions, that you're looking forward to digging into in the immediate future? So a challenge that you're looking forward to digging into.
There are so many challenges to dig into. Resources is one that comes to mind. Thinking about budgets, federal budgets to support arts and culture at the federal level, at the provincial level, at the local level. I think that if places like Museum London, if funding for arts and culture activities, spaces, venues, projects, people is important to you, then you should be making it known to your MPPs and to your MPs and to your local representatives. Because in times like these, as we know, as we have seen, when there's a recession on the horizon, often arts and culture is the thing to be cut. But we know, and there's evidence, that the arts are essential. So I will say that. So resources is one. I think also, I'm excited to learn more about London history and London art. I'm excited to look at how a structure like museum, I'm interested in how creativity, artistic practice can influence bureaucratic structures. And Museum London is a bureaucratic structure. And how do we create those little edges of opportunity and change? Because I think that we do have the potential to create the kind of model that we want to see in the world. And we can model a way of working together and being together that we'll be catching. So I'm interested in that.
On that, I think that was a wonderful answer. Julie, I want to thank you so much. I think one of the underlying assumptions of your talk, the whole talk that you just articulated at the end, is that art is essential. And it's essential because of the power it has to change bureaucratic structures. And if Museum London is a bureaucratic structure, boy, is the university ever a bureaucratic structure. And, you know, just those little acts of creation, those little tiny things that can happen in an everyday way, are like those seeds scattered in the cracks of sidewalks that just, you know, come and change a landscape. So I really want to affirm the value of the work that you've been doing and how grateful we are that you're here, how grateful we are that you come to talk to us today. And before we applaud, I also need to thank a few other individuals in the room. Greg D'Souza at the back with the headphones has been taking care of the sound, not just for the room, but for the online audience. Jennifer Tramble, who is the program coordinator for SASA and takes care of all the logistics. And oh my God, Jennifer is so important to us. And then Josh Landier, who is a public humanities director here in the Faculty of Arts and Humanities and has been running public humanities at Western for a long time. And has been monitoring the online audience as well. So thank you, Josh, for doing that. And now I'll invite you all to thank Julia.